And we are live. Welcome, everyone, to the Joy of Pixels podcast for what is today? June 19th. Friday, June 19th, 2020. I am joined once again by the Akko Sambo. What's up, man? How are you?
I am doing well. I'm in the deep German jungle where it's getting hotter and hotter, but I'm surviving.
But do you have your window open like a good German?
Like a good German, my window is always open, yes.
Good. We got an interesting show today. We both of us have not really been playing a whole lot, but I think we're just gonna have kind of a nice casual conversation about some stuff I'm excited about today. I hope everyone is doing well in chat. Welcome to everyone that's joining us today. But let's jump into it. I mean, you've been playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey. You want to talk about that at all? Or I feel like you play
Major
that pretty much
revelations
every week.
Yeah, and probably for some weeks to come. I feel like I'm getting closer to like the last third of the main story, at least. But it'll take some time. Yeah, nothing new there. Still enjoying it. But that's about it.
Yeah, and I haven't really been playing a whole lot either this week. I've been making my way through Majora's Mask for the first time, which I'm still enjoying that. Still early on. I finished the first temple in that game, the first dungeon. And then I also started, I can't remember if I started this last week or this week, but I started playing The Last of Us 1 because I wanted to replay it to get ready for Last of Us 2. And I think I'm actually getting pretty close to the end. I think I can probably finish it up in another stream. So I'm very excited to jump into The Last of Us 2.
Any new thoughts now that you replay it? Anything that stands out to you?
I still think it's a fantastic game. I think it's one of the greatest games in terms of narrative and writing and storytelling and writing in terms of characters. The character development is just A+ in that game. Good gracious, we're trying to do a podcast here.
It's the Medal of Honor guy again.
I know.
We'll talk about Medal of Honor later.
My biggest problem with it, which I had this problem when I played it the first time, is just the controls. I just struggle so much with the controls, and this is much more of a me problem. That I just cannot aim with a controller to save my life, literally, because I die all the time. I have to play on the easiest difficulty, and I still die all the time. I also just don't think that the gameplay is that great in the game. A good majority of it is kind of, I don't want to say it forces you to play stealthy, but I feel like you really like that's the canon way to play the game is semi-stealthy. And I guess it does kind of force you to play a little bit more stealthy because you are limited a lot on ammunition and supplies and things like that you find. I do really like the hand-to-hand combat. Like, it's very visceral and feels very realistic, maybe a little too realistic at times. But for me, this game is just 100% about the story and about the characters and about Joel and Ellie's adventures and bonding together and really finding out who they are. And I think the characters are just so well written. Like, they're both not great people, but they Ellie, I think, is a little bit more questionable because she's so young and she's still kind of finding her way in the world. But Joel is just like such a broken character. But I think that's also just so realistic with what he went through. And I just love his slow character development, how he starts at the beginning of that game just being so bitter and just not wanting to care anything about Ellie, and then how he slowly opens up and knows that he shouldn't allow himself to care because it's just going to hurt him in the end, but he does anyway. And yeah, it's just fantastically acted as well. The not just voice actors, but I mean they literally mocapped all of this. So it is full on acting, and it's fantastic from everyone.
So when will you start with The Last of Us 2? Now that it's
I wanted to start literally like today because it came out today, and I wanted to finish Last of Us 1 and then just roll right into it. But I think I will probably end up starting it early next week. Like I said, I've probably got one more stream of The Last of Us 1, and then I just want to go right into Last of Us 2. And I feel like I've been really fortunate. I know that there were so many leaks. The story was leaked. There was so much gameplay was leaked. I've avoided all of it. I haven't seen any of it. I haven't even looked at any reviews. I mean, I literally have just gone completely media blackout for this game. So just excited for that.
Days, you can do it.
Yeah. What's the worst that could happen?
Right. But now that you play through Last of Us 1, what would be your expectations for Last of Us 2? What do you want from the sequel in terms of like what can they improve on? Like what is the next step for the franchise, or do you just want to be basically the same, just with an extension of the story?
That's a really good question, because I was very much in the camp of when I finished Last of Us 1, I didn't really love the ending. And I think a lot of people were kind of back and forth on the ending. But the more I thought about it, the more I really, really appreciated the ending, because it is not just like a perfect happy ending, without getting into any spoilers. Even though this game's been out for 7 years, but I still want to try and not say too much about the ending. It's definitely something that just like leaves you with like, wow, I don't know how I feel about that. But I think the more that you think about it, and the more you think about the characters in the game and just who they are, like it makes sense. Even though it's not really something that I think I would have done personally if I was in that position. But it's just such an interesting way to wrap things up. And I was in the camp that I was like, I don't feel like we need another sequel to this. I was very happy. Well, happy is not the right word, but I was content with how it ended and how Joel and Ellie's story wrapped up. And I was always hoping that if there was going to be a sequel, it would be more like, I don't know, there's a huge time skip in the first one. There's literally a 20-year time skip between the beginning of the game and the part that takes up just 20 minutes into the game. So I had always kind of hoped that maybe they would like go back and kind of show what had happened in the middle of all of that, or maybe just show someone else's perspective. But again, I know so little about Last of Us 2 that I don't really have any expectations, other than I know that you play as Ellie, and I know Joel is in it because they literally showed that in like the initial reveal trailer. And then I did see one of the trailers where Ellie is dancing with, I guess, her girlfriend, or somebody that she cares about very much. And I'm assuming that something terrible is going to happen to her, and she's going to go off and, do something. She's probably tried to make a life, and I don't know if she's in touch with Joel or what's going on with that. But I don't know. I'm just going into this just completely blind. I don't really have many expectations because I don't really, like I said, I don't really even know what to expect, other than it seems to be reviewing very well.
Yeah. Although I'm not as much staying away from spoilers, I generally stay away from spoilers for The Last of Us 2, because I think eventually, like as long as the general consensus is that it's good and maybe even an improvement to the first one, then I will pick it up down the line and we'll check it out, kind of like I did with Uncharted, where Naughty Dog has at least proven to me that even if I may not be the biggest fan of a previous title, that they do know how to improve upon them. So I'm definitely interested to see what they can do with The Last of Us and how they address some of the criticism that was far and few between, but still there, and also how I'm especially interested to see how their gameplay evolved now with The Last of Us 2, because in between you now had Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy, where they also polished that up way better and the shooting worked way better. Excited to see that. And I wonder how generally they will balance the action to suspense ratio in the second one, because I oftentimes see in sequels that it must be bigger, better, more bombastic than the previous one, and that can lead down to a thing too action heavy approach potentially, where I'm just interested to see if they fall into that trap or if they actually skirt that line well. So
yeah, Last of Us One. The Last of Us One, I think, was paced very well. I don't think it overstays its welcome. Like every kind of area or level, so to speak, is just really paced out well. I definitely would hope and guess that the gameplay has evolved and been polished up quite a bit. Like you say, since they came out with Uncharted 4, I thought the gameplay in Uncharted 4 was just vastly improved compared to... I mean, it's kind of hard to compare that to Last of Us, but to compare it to the previous Uncharted games, which you can easily compare it to, like, it is just night and day, in my opinion.
Yeah.
For sure. Just for me personally, like with being so bad at aiming, having the ability to like have the reticule like snap to the enemy was extremely helpful, and I really wish that was in Last of Us 1, because I just don't enjoy shooting like in those games at all with a controller.
Yeah.
I wish I did, but it's just too difficult for me.
Yeah, and just to chime in on the end of Last of Us 1 without spoilers, I was in the camp that I wasn't a fan of the ending either. And I think for me, the issue was more that given the character progression of the main characters, I personally felt the development broke in that moment for me. And for that character, I felt like in that moment, it didn't make sense to choose the way it happened, which is why I can see how that may vary from person to person, how you play it and perceive it. But I wished that they had... I mean, that obviously makes a sequel harder, but I kind of wished at the ending that there would have been a choice for the player to kind of decide, do you go this route or that route? And that kind of miffed me about the ending, because I felt like for me personally, the character that I have grown fond of and the progression that I have seen now went into a completely different direction than I had seen that character go.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's kind of how I felt when I first played it. I kind of had wished, or would have wished, that I would have had the choice. But I guess the more I thought about it and the more I read about it and the more I kind of just pondered upon this character, I feel like I really realized that like this character is just a very broken character and just not like, I don't know. It made sense to me the more I thought about it that he would make that decision, as just kind of terrible as a decision. I don't know. I mean, it's a tough decision for sure, but I don't know. I think that's what makes the game so good, though, is because it's like it's not black and white. It's not just, like, oh, this is obviously what they should have done.
For sure, yeah.
I think that's what just makes it so interesting and so good.
Yeah, I don't think that the ending is bad in a vacuum. I just think the progression for me, there was like a disconnect for me personally. Like, I don't think in the vacuum itself, I think I'm totally fine with it. It's just like the way that the path that I took in my mind didn't lead to that ending. But I can also see that that is obviously a perception thing.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I'm excited to play Last of Us 2 though. Like I said, I wasn't super thrilled or like excited that we were getting a direct sequel, but there's Medal of Honor guy again. But yeah, I'm all in now at this point, and I'm glad that I've been able to avoid spoilers and everything like that. So I'm excited to play that. Uh-oh. Hang on. You're frozen. I don't know if you can hear me.
Frozen for me.
Oh, are we back?
I'm not frozen on my page either.
I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't hear what you said for about the past 30 seconds or so. Oh no. Discord really does not want us to hear what Akko has to say. Are you there, Akko?
Can you hear me? I'm not sure if is it the German internet?
I'm not sure. You seem to be back now.
Yeah. Yeah, it showed a bad connection to the US Central server. So
let me try and switch servers. I'm going to switch it to Europe.
Yeah.
We'll probably cut out just for a second. Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can. Okay. We'll try that. We'll give that a go.
All right. No, I was just saying, I wonder how much of a time jump there is in between The Last of Us 1 and 2. I don't know. But
it looks like it's maybe, I don't know, I'm kind of guessing maybe 5 years or so. Ellie looks like she's maybe like late teens, early 20s or something.
Yeah, something like that. So kind of... that obviously then begs the question, like, what happened to the world? So there are a lot of questions, obviously, that will, I guess, then early on already decide into which direction it will go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I really had hoped that they would have explored this universe a little bit more and, done different characters. But that's also kind of a big risk, I guess, too, to... take it in a whole new direction and have basically a new IP set in the same existing IP.
Something like Lost Legacy-ish would have been nice, maybe with Joel before the events of The Last of Us, that you have a Lost Legacy type of thing with what's her name, the lady that Joel hangs out with
Tess.
in the beginning.
Yeah,
they seem to know each other a little. So maybe you could have had an adventure with those two beforehand to explore the world kind of a little bit more.
What if it was just like before the pandemic and it was just like, well, Joel is just a construction worker or something?
Yeah, I mean, why not? Yeah.
There's also an HBO series that's in production. Have you heard about this for The Last of Us? So yes, I'm really curious what they're going to do with that.
Yes. I will be interested to see if they fill in the gap between Last of Us 1 and 2, or if it will be after 2, or if it will be completely separate, but in the world of The Last of Us. Yeah, interesting to see. I think the writer and producer of the game works also on the show. So
Neil Druckmann, which is pretty unusual for these types of adaptations. Yes. Usually you get these, games that are sold just as a license to somebody, and then they just destroy the license and do a terrible job at creating. But they also always pick games like Doom that, to make into a movie, which are just terrible ideas.
But it's just like movie executives barely have any idea about any property, and
Yeah.
even less so about video games. I heard a story about, I think it was the Man of Steel movie with Henry Cavill about Superman, that movie executives were suggesting that Superman loses his cape for like half an hour of the movie so he can't fly. And then it was like a 2 hour and then it's like this walking on eggshells where how do I explain those executives that his cape has nothing to do with how he flies, but I have to do it in a respectful manner so they don't cut me out of the movie. And I mean, I feel like if you don't know about Superman, I have a bad feeling about any video game.
Right.
So it's good to have someone who knows the property in there and be like, hey,
Yeah,
no,
absolutely. And I think this, if it's done well, which I think it will, I think this could be a very successful adaptation, because this is a game that, again, to me is just like 100% about the story. Like, I don't care too much about the gameplay itself, but the story and the characters are so interesting.
I'm more interested in a good HBO high-level produced show than I am in another game, actually.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. All right, let's move on to the news. We got a few things to talk about. First off, we have an exciting new announcement. There's a new Pokemon game coming out.
Yes. Oh, snap.
And it's Pokemon Snap. You're going to have to explain this to me because I don't know anything about this.
Okay, I have to start, obviously, with a little nostalgia here. Because it's Pokemon and that is how it all started. But I never owned the original, but because I never owned an N64. But my best friend at the time did. And pretty much every time I went over to his place, we played Pokemon Stadium, Pokemon Snap, and a snowboard game. And because they were all fun and you could, they were multiplayer. Pokemon Snap was not multiplayer, but it was fun. And it's hard to explain what made Pokemon Snap so special, but I think by the reaction online, you can see that a lot of people are very hyped about it. And people have been waiting for a sequel to Pokemon Snap for a long, long time. And the way it works, the basic concept of the first one is that you have different areas where you are on a kind of rail track, safari track, where you can't control the speed of your little railroad, and you have to take pictures of Pokemon. That's really it. But obviously, in order to unlock more areas, you then have to reach certain points and benchmarks and have better pictures and collect more Pokemon in form of photographs. But then also the worlds were very interactive and almost puzzly, where you had to figure out that you have to, I don't know, you could like throw rocks or something like that to trigger certain events in the world that then would make more rare Pokemon appear that you then can take pictures of, or or Pokemon do something fun. Like I remember something, there was you did something and then a group of Pikachus were like playing with a beach ball or something like that. And when you then take pictures of that, you get extra points. So it was you had all those levels. I think it was just like 4 or 5 levels, but they had a very high replayability because you were trying to figure out all these little secrets and little things to how can I create these special moments. And when you then finally found something out, especially because that was obviously pre like internet in the sense of where everyone knows everything about games. Like obviously the internet existed, but you as a 8-year-old, as a 10-year-old weren't looking up all the different ways about how to trigger events in Pokemon Snap. So it was this thing where you tried out all these things and you were going through the same track over and over again. But then when you discovered like a new rare Pokemon that you can take a picture of, or that you triggered a special event, there was this grand moment of discovery for you, and would give you extra points. So I'm excited for it.
I heard a lot of people saying too that like the original one was like one of the first times you could actually see Pokemon in 3D. And
Yeah.
so that was just like a really exciting thing. Um, yeah, this I mean, this doesn't do it for me, but I'm glad that you're excited for it. And I know everyone that is a Pokemon fan is excited for it, it seems like.
Yes.
I mean, it seems like this is just obviously a huge nostalgia thing, like most Nintendo things are. I do think it's interesting, though. I mean, I don't know. I've been able to kind of really get into some of the Nintendo franchises, even though I don't have the nostalgia for it. I really have enjoyed Zelda, really enjoyed Mario, really enjoyed Luigi's Mansion. But I don't know. Pokemon just does not do it for me. And I don't know why. I wish so bad that I could enjoy it, but it just doesn't do anything for me.
I mean, it's okay to be wrong.
I want to though. I want to feel that
Yeah.
excitement that you guys feel. Um, but I also don't
I think it
understand
may
it
also.
because it seems like every Pokemon fan that I talk to is like they want this. They want like Pokemon Breath of the Wild, but they still get the same old Pokemon, but yet they still get so excited for it, and I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to explain. I think it's also when you don't have the nostalgia and then try Pokemon. I think there is the expectation that there is something special about it, but there really isn't. It is really about the kind of really the casual fun and the like just the collecting. It's I don't know. I think there it also has a lot to do with expectation and expecting something so grand that everyone loves it, but then you go in and it's kind of like a regular game that is fine. But I think just going in and just kind of letting you enjoy the ride is more of the mindset to go in than really expecting anything.
I think. I mean, first of all, there's nothing wrong with selling something for a nostalgia
No.
sake. Like that's fantastic. Nostalgia is a wonderful thing, and I mean, I have nostalgia for a lot of games and properties and things like that. Um, but I guess I just wish that they would, like Mario and like Zelda. You know, I had never played a Zelda game before, and when I went into Breath of the Wild for the first time, like I had such a good time because it's a really good game. And like I think anybody can go into that game and just play it and really be captivated by it. Even though like going back to Ocarina of Time, I'm like, oh, this is I see a lot of Breath of the Wild in this, like, and especially with Mario, like playing Mario Odyssey for the first time, or my first Mario game was Mario Odyssey, and then going back to Mario Galaxy, I think Mario Galaxy is actually a better game, especially like level design wise. But there's still just something about Mario Odyssey that is just fun and it's very inviting and fun to play and challenging to a certain degree. Which I think maybe that's part of what I struggle with Pokemon is it just seems like so simplistic. And I know everyone says that it gets more complicated, and I'm sure it does get harder and tougher the more you get into it.
Yeah.
But at first, I don't know. It just seems like it feels like a game made for a 10-year-old, which I think
Yeah.
it is really.
Yeah, they are not tough, and honestly, they. I mean, maybe then the final top four fights they are tough, but up until then, really, as an adult, you shouldn't really struggle. like, it's pretty self explanatory. It is really about collecting Pokemons and then leveling them up. And for me, always the enjoyment was, especially like with new generations of Pokemon, um, to see which one would evolve and then what they would evolve to kind of
That
just
is
see
kind
your
of a cool
Pokemon
thing,
grow.
yeah.
Um, which is why, like, I know a lot of people immediately get the new game and then they go on the PokeWiki and like see to catch them all. I when I now played Sword and Shield, for example, I played through it and afterwards I would like get the wiki out and collect the ones that I missed. And I have to say, for Sword and Shield, they added a bunch of new mechanics and the quality of life improvements compared to the other ones before, which was interesting. So there is some evolution within the Pokemon games as well. But I can also see, like, if you don't get into it, yeah, like the actual gameplay itself, the actual game itself, it's nothing that special. You kind of have to be part of the fandom already to then appreciate the details behind it.
Yeah,
because then you can get into the discussion. Oh, which generation of Pokemon do you prefer? And this one is shitty design because this and that. And like to really get into it, you have to already be part of it. Otherwise, they all kind of look the same.
Wouldn't you, as a Pokemon fan, though, wouldn't you love for them to like take a chance and do something like a Breath of the Wild style Pokemon, like a big open world with to explore?
Sword and Shield was pretty much that.
Really?
Yeah, like it was the first really in 3D completely. Especially like the first one on the major console. Before it was always just the handheld, right? This one was on the Switch. There was Pokemon Go, but like really, or Pokemon Let's Go. But the first major new title on the Switch or on the main console. So in that it was a big improvement, and there was a lot, and like they are all pretty much already open world. I mean, that's the point of it. You unlock obviously the world as you go on, but then they are open world and you are supposed to visit them. And I think one of the things that Sword and Shield did better than other ones is giving you reasons to return to places you already visited, whereas before it was oftentimes, oh, I got here the level 10 Pokemon and then you move on, whereas Sword and Shield actually introduced some mechanics where you couldn't catch, there were like stronger Pokemon like roaming around that you can just see on your major screen, and they were usually stronger than the ones that just pop up randomly out of the tall grass. So you would have a reason to return back, and they also added a limit as to how to the level of Pokemon you can catch. Before that, you could theoretically catch any Pokemon as long as you had enough Pokeballs and your team was strong enough to weaken the Pokemon. In Sword and Shield, they added that you have to progress in the main story to unlock the higher level Pokemon, but then gave you a reason to return to certain areas to then catch the stronger Pokemon. And they did that in a way where they showed you some of the roaming Pokemons that were very high level and that you were working towards. Like they gave you a reason to return. And I think that was definitely an improvement they made in the last one.
Okay. I don't think they put a date on that, did they?
No.
No date.
No date.
So yeah, probably, I don't know, I would guess next year sometime that'll be coming out.
Yeah, probably.
Star Wars Squadrons was announced last week. Or no, it was earlier this week, I think.
It was doing the EA thing.
Well, they announced it earlier this week. In just kind of like a quick trailer, because I think it actually leaked. And then they said, see more in EA Play. And so they showed off the exact same trailer. And then they actually showed some gameplay. But I don't know. I thought this actually looks pretty good. Are you excited for this?
Yep, definitely. I mean, I'm a big Star Wars fan, so that always gets my attention. And a good flying and fighting game. I'm looking forward to it. I will be interested to see what the specifics are as to what type of game it is. Will it be just online multiplayer? Will it have a single player campaign?
They did confirm that it will have a single player campaign. They talked a little bit about it in the EA Play. It sounds pretty generic, honestly. I think they said it takes place after Return of the Jedi. It looks like you just kind of play as like a very generic fighter pilot, I guess, going on missions. I don't think they're really taking too much of a risk with this. It seems kind of like the Battlefront 2 campaign.
I wonder how much of that they actually maybe plan for as a DLC or something for Battlefront, because like it's suspicious that it's the exact same time frame.
Right. And it looks to me like it even has some of the characters from Battlefront 2 from the single player, which honestly that's kind of cool. I mean, if they're kind of making like, you know, a spin-off, so to speak, of that. I still haven't played through the single player part of Battlefront 2. I've heard, again, it's pretty generic, but it is kind of cool that you get to play through like all through the different trilogies as different characters. I think you get to play as Luke Skywalker in some and things like that. It looks fun if you're a Star Wars fan. I think they even had some. There was a flying mode in the multiplayer part of Battlefront 2. I don't know how much you played of that. I don't think it was this detailed, though. I think it might be third person, but this one looks like it's fully first person. I don't know if you can zoom out and go into third person. I think it's cool. Somebody was saying, I think Minish was saying that he didn't like how big the HUD was and everything, and how much room it takes up, which I understand that. But I also think it's cool that it looks like they are actually flying a lot with the HUD. Like you're specifically using the HUD to track other players and things like that. So I think that's kind of cool. It looks more realistic like that. I'll probably check this out. It'll be on EA's Origin Access, which I subscribe to that. So, I won't have to buy it or anything. I'll just check it out. I don't think they mentioned any word on price. I'm assuming this is going to be a full $60 game. Yeah. Comes out October 2nd, which is a little interesting because that's still current gen. No word on. I'm assuming it'll be coming to next gen, but no word on like if they will let you upgrade that for free or how that's going to work. We still don't even know when the new consoles are coming out, so that's a problem as well. But yeah, I think it looks pretty fun.
Yep, I'm looking forward to that as well. And about the Battlefront 2 campaign, as you said, it's very generic, but if you have like 4 to 6 hours to spend...
Did you play it?
And it's fine. I mean, it was a little disappointing in the sense of that they announced that they would tell like a different story than before, and you will play as a
they never do
officer and to see it from the different side, and don't expect too much. But if you go into it with no expectation, just want a fun 4 to 6 hour campaign with some good action in the Star Wars universe, then it's fine. Like it's absolutely serviceable.
Honestly, the if you want a good single player campaign, just play through Fallen Order, because I thought that one was. I mean, I don't think it was like 10 out of 10 great, but I thought it was very good.
For sure,
and really well told. I think, I don't know. I still have kind of mixed feelings on that game. I think it was good, but really has some things that they could have improved upon. But I'm glad that we have that game. Really happy that we have that game.
Yeah, it certainly had its flaws. I personally really enjoyed it, I look forward to more in that series, wherever that will go.
My biggest problem with the game was the level and environmental designs. They were so specifically laid out to be a Metroidvania that it just felt so unrealistic to me. Like it was fun, but it was like just so obvious that they, put certain areas and certain points where you could jump to in certain locations that you just couldn't quite reach until you get a double jump or something like that. And I mean, that's just kind of a problem with being a Metroidvania, but I think it can be done better. I think God of War, the newest God of War, did a really, really good job with that as far as being somewhat Metroidvania, and blocking areas off, but feeling more natural and realistic.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, but again, I'm very happy that we have that game. Cyberpunk 2077. delayed again.
It's just
so. I have a feeling that you and I are going to be very similar on our thoughts with this. So first of all, let's mention that Cyberpunk was originally scheduled for mid-April this year. They came out in January when like every single video game was being delayed, and we're like, hey, we know everyone's excited for this, but we need a little extra time. They even said back in January that the game was pretty much complete. They just wanted some extra time to polish it, work out all the bugs. So they said, we're going to push it back to September. I don't think too many people were super surprised by that. I was honestly devastated because I was looking so forward to playing that game in April. And it broke my heart when they delayed it. And when all of COVID started happening and all of this stuff started happening, I was like, this game's going to get delayed again. But they came out multiple times. This is what kind of frustrates me. They came out multiple times and assured everybody, they said, hey, we know that all this is happening, but we are very confident that we are going to hit our September date. The game is coming along great. Everything is going good. They were saying this like up to a couple of weeks ago even. And sure enough, they release a statement out on Twitter yesterday, stating, I'll just read the statement. It says
the same in January.
Yeah, it says, we have decided to move the launch of Cyberpunk 2077 from September 17th to November 19th. Those of you familiar with the way we make games know that we won't ship something when it's not ready when it's done. It's not a phrase we say because it sounds right. It's something we live by, even when we know we'll take the heat for it. At the same time, we are fully aware that making such a decision costs us your trust, and trading trust for additional time is one of the hardest decisions a game developer can make. I just want to pause there and say that they don't have to have this problem if they just wouldn't put a date on it until they're sure that they can hit this date. And I don't get this, Akko. Help me understand this.
I always wonder. I'm not sure, but I think there is a lot of battling between the people who want to publish the game and are the higher ups and want the revenue for the first quarter in the year and want to have something to show shareholders and all of that. And then the developers who are like, no, we can't, like, it's just not possible, or maybe it's possible. And as soon as the board of directors gets there's a 2% chance, it's like, yep, that's our release date, make it happen. I feel like that happens a lot. And I mean, we're totally on the same page that it doesn't make sense. And it's, again, this under promise, over deliver kind of deal. But that's just how it goes.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that there's, and I mean, it must be terrible to be a developer for any of these games, because everyone always says, you know, they blame the developers and get frustrated with them, when I'm sure it's not the developers that are making these decisions. It's the people that are in charge of the business side, of the publishing, of the marketing. They're the ones that are pushing out these dates. But I just feel like something has got to happen, because this literally happens to every single major video game that comes out. That, you know, we see a date, we all get excited for it, and then it gets delayed. Sometimes it gets delayed again. Sometimes Last of Us 2 was a little bit different circumstances, but I mean, that game was delayed, I think, at least 3 times. It was originally, actually, I think 4, because it was originally stated that it was coming out in 2019, and then they put a date on it in the Sony State of Play that it was coming out in February. And then not even a month after that, they came out and said that they were pushing it back to May. And then COVID happened, and then they said, we don't know when it's coming out. Which, honestly, I wish that's just what they would say, because they don't know when it's coming out, you know? And I have no reason to trust this date now. You know, they're saying that it's coming out November 19th. Who knows? They could push it back to 2021. I don't know. I don't think anyone knows, and I hate it because it kills my excitement for the game. You know, like I was so excited to play this game in April, and then it was pushed back, and I'm like, okay, you know, it is what it is. This happens. I'll play it in September, and my hype level goes down, and then you know this comes out, and it's like I know I'm going to be excited for this game when I get my hands on it, but I don't care at this point. I don't want to see anything else about it. I don't want to hear anything else about this game. I just want to play it.
I think I'm a step ahead there. Like I don't get hyped for a game like before a week out or so. Like if it's like a week or two out, then I'm ready to get excited and hype and make plans when to play it and how much to play it. But before that, it's just, I mean, in the end, I don't like, and I think we're also they're also on the same page. It's like if they would tell us it would come out, if they now would have given us, oh, it's unfortunately 2021 February, but that would be the date. Then we would be okay. Like now we have a date. Like if that is the date, that's the date, and if it takes longer, it takes longer. As long as we then actually get a good product, I think we all prefer a good polished product than getting a game 2 months earlier. So I think as long as it turns out to be good and as long as it delivers, they can do that. But the issue is, I think gamers get more restless with games that do this and then they don't deliver, because now you're already like you're basically paying trust in advance now, and if you don't get the get it back, then you're pissed off.
That's a really good point, because there are so many games that get delayed that still turn out to be terrible.
The Witcher 3 was delayed multiple times, and
yeah,
before I think one was before the release time. The second to last was fairly shortly before that, and then it was delayed for another half a year. But I mean, then it turned out to be one of the greatest games of all times. Most people would agree, and people were like, okay, well, it's fine to wait half a year for that. But if it
but the thing was, it still was not perfect on launch. Like there were still a number of bugs with The Witcher 3 at launch. But there are a bunch of examples that games get delayed multiple times and then they're still terrible. Look at Anthem. That game was delayed, I think, at least 2 times, and that was obviously just a mess. Mass Effect Andromeda is another one that was delayed multiple times, and that was a mess on launch. And then there's games like, there's games like Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege, which came out and was a disaster on launch and a mess, but they keep working on it, and that game has turned out to be like one of the biggest selling games for that for Ubisoft. And I mean, it's not a game for me, but people love that game. The Division is another one. Ghost Recon Wildlands is another one. Like I'm not defending this at all. I don't think you should ever put your game out before it's ready, but like I just don't know what breaks down. There's got to be some kind of a planning problem or somebody that I just wish they would. I don't know. Like every single game gets delayed at least 6 months. So why not just say that it's coming out, in 2023, and then give yourself an extra 6 months to develop a game, and then if you get it done early, then just release the game early, and then you make everybody happy.
To a degree, also because of pre-orders, to get the pre-order as soon as possible, and you can't get, like, it's harder to get a pre-order if you don't get it give a date, and I think that probably also has to do with it.
But
like for example, you were able to pre-order Cyberpunk, I think, last September or something like that.
Do they actually take the money? I don't really pre-order games very much. Do they actually take your money?
I don't know, but I think, but the pre-order is less about the actual money flow. It's more about
just show
again,
how
the
excited people are
statistics,
about it.
yeah, and excited and like for the numbers and be like, oh, we already have like that, and based on previous numbers, we can extrapolate that will mean we will sell at least so that much copies, and that sells well with higher ups. So I think it's really a lot about that as well.
I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, I feel like Cyberpunk is going to be one of the greatest selling games of all time, regardless of any of this. So I just don't understand why they need to do it. Even though I completely agree with you, I think that's a lot of what it is. I think that this is purely just, marketing and business nonsense that are saying, like, we got to push a date out, we got to put the date out, and I don't know. I just wish they would do that, or wish they would stop doing that. I feel like every now and then, like a company like Bethesda comes around, and as buggy as their games are, like they just did such a good job with Fallout 4. They announced it, and then it came out in like 4 months. Sony has even done a pretty decent job with this in the past with some games like Spider-Man. They I don't think they announced the date for that until it was like 3 months away. I don't necessarily mind teasing a video game a year, maybe even 2 years in advance, but just be honest with us. Say if this game is far off, don't tell us it's coming out next year and put a date on it. Don't even put a year on it if you don't know when this is coming out. Personally, I don't want to hear about the game until it's like 6 months away, but that just doesn't seem to work in video games. So I feel like that's a good compromise, but I don't know if they'll ever learn their lessons.
I mean, if there are no consequences to their actions, that probably will also
that's the thing. People praise CD Projekt Red for doing this, and praise companies when they delay a game. And again, like I don't want to say it's not the right decision. I think that it's good that they are taking the extra time if they need it.
I think there is also because, like, again, we have to then kind of separate from the developers and the publishing part, because like I think the praise for it is because we know that if they don't delay the game, the crunch will be harder and the developers will get screwed over. Whereas like then at least give them some time to finish the game.
Yeah,
I think there's more awareness about that as well now.
I think it's also important for people to remember that making games is extremely difficult. And I was talking to Reality about this, and I want to have him on the podcast a little in the future. And I would love to just have a discussion about this, because he would definitely be able to give us a better perspective from a developer's point of view. He's literally moving today, though, so he obviously couldn't do that today.
What's more important, this podcast?
I know, right? But yeah, I would love to get his point of view, because my understanding is that like the first 90% of the game goes really, really quickly, like from a development point of view. And then like that last 5 to 10% just can take, like sometimes it can take, a few months. Other times it can take like 3 years. It just,
I think a big
really
issue
depends.
There is also because like when you like screw on one side, something else pops up, and then you need to fix that. But that then causes like you have all these chain reaction, because the tighter it is knitted, the more ripple effects it has to change something in it.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion. I hope we just get to play this game soon. I just want to play the game, but take the time you need.
But it's like, wake me up when September ends.
Yeah, well, wake me up when November ends. Now, wake me up when 2020 ends.
Yeah, we're fine.
Let's see. I think that's about all the news that we have. I mean, there's some other things that I can just throw out really quickly. The developers of Spider-Man Miles Morales talked a little bit more about the game. They said that it is a full-on game, but they were a little dodgy on like the length of the game. I don't think this is probably going to be like a full-length game. I think it's going to be more of just kind of a side story, but I think that's fine.
Yeah, the Lost Legacy kind of deal, 10,
Yeah.
15 hours of
Horizon Forbidden West, man, I always want to say like Horizon Forbidden Wild or something like that.
yeah.
That's going to be a hard title to get used to saying. But they are apparently targeting a release date of 2021, so that means it'll come out in 2023.
Let the salt flow
I know.
through you.
Let's see. Star Citizen has become the most expensive video game ever, and still not finished.
I mean, Fortnite is in early access, so
that's true. One other thing I'll say really quick. This is a great time for gamers because there are so many demos available. And I don't know if you have looked into any of these, mostly on Steam. And I know you're more of a console gamer. But there are so many demos. I think there's like 150 demos that they've released over the past couple of weeks. A lot of them are, smaller indie games, but I love this notion of demos coming back and becoming a thing. And it's just, I don't know, it's just so fun to jump into a demo and just check out a game. I downloaded a bunch of them. I downloaded probably, 15 demos. So I want to check those out over maybe the next week or so, and hopefully I can give some reports on some games, because there's some really cool small little games out there that I think deserve more attention.
I think it's great that we have this comeback of demos.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's jump into a few questions. You got a couple of questions here that I like. You wanna ask your questions?
Yes. Let me pull them up.
Super prepared.
Of course.
Sorry, okay, I didn't tell you we were going to do this or when we were going to do it.
Yeah. Okay. It's okay. So yeah, first question. What are some games?
Hang on. Oh, okay, you're back.
Okay. What are some games you started playing having low expectations but ended up being great? So games where you went and being like, give it a try, either because you didn't like the genre or because you heard bad reviews, but for some reason you started playing it, but then you actually turn out to really love the game.
Oh man, so many games. The first game that came to my mind was Bayonetta. I had seen it played a little bit and always heard that it was really good. But I've never really been a big fan of like button mashy games, and I thought it was very much just like a button masher, just really heavy action. And when I started playing it, I realized that it's much more tactical, and it's kind of like a fighting game in a sense that like you have different combos and things that you have to learn, and it was very overwhelming for me at first too, because there are so many different combos, but it is so satisfying to play that game and to feel like you're actually getting a little bit better at it and pulling off the what do they call the dodge in that game? I can't remember. Witch time, that's what it's called. Pulling off those witch time perfect dodges and then going in for attacks and learning combos and things like that. Also, the story is really interesting in that game. It gets really bizarre and really deep in that story. That is definitely one. I mean, Dark Souls 1, just Dark Souls in general, is one that I literally hated that game when I first started playing. And I've told the story many times, but hated it. And, of course, we can't have a podcast without mentioning Dark Souls. I'm trying to think what else. Do you have any while I'm thinking of some other ones?
I think I mentioned before last week Ni no Kuni. The first one was definitely, for me, one of them that I picked up with no expectation. But since I mentioned that before, Hollow Knight was definitely for me, because I always had in mind that it was more of a jump and run platformer. And
that was kind of the same for me too.
Yes, and then I had it on Humble Bundle, and a lot of people obviously recommending it. And then I tried it out and really, really enjoyed it. Such a great game. And I think for me, streaming really helped me expand my horizon a little bit more for that, because I kind of you get into um, like a phase where you're like, you don't know what to do, but you still want to stream. And then obviously you have more people suggesting games that they enjoy and they enjoyed, and that led to a bunch of games that I wouldn't have tried out otherwise, but then ended up really liking. And I think the biggest one there for me is Yakuza Zero. I didn't really expect much from it.
Yeah.
Even when it was recommended, I picked it up for like $10 or so in the PlayStation Store, and I was like, okay, like probably will be fun, like for like a couple of hours, maybe like do one stream of it, maybe two, and then just see how I feel about it. And then it turned out to be one of my favorite games of all times, very quickly. So that was probably the biggest 180 I made on a game in terms of expectations to where I then actually liked it.
Yeah, I would even just say JRPGs in general for me. I think Final Fantasy 15 was the first JRPG that I played, and while I wasn't just blown away with it, I really, really enjoyed it. And then kind of getting more into the JRPGs and going back to even the turn-based JRPGs, which I think I enjoy quite a bit more. Playing Final Fantasy X for the first time was a really, really great experience. Also, Persona was another one that I never could have imagined playing, I don't know, 5 years ago. But now I love that game. Yeah, there's a lot of them.
I think for me also Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines was another one, because I played it so many years after it came out. I played last year for the first time, and it was always one of the titles that you hear about, but I never really cared about it. And I was like, vampires, and maybe it's like horror and stuff. I never really paid attention to what the game is actually about or what type of game it is actually. Just assumed that it's some kind of horror action thing and stayed away from it. And for some reason or another, I just then got interested in it and tried it out and really enjoyed it, despite its age and some bugginess. But really had a great time with it.
Anybody in chat have any answers for that question? Any games that you had low expectations for? Yeah,
that's another. Like, I have a few Sniper Elites, and I hear like most people really like them. Just never gave it a chance. Maybe I should do that too.
I actually really I love sniper games, and sniper mechanics in games are usually so poorly done. The Sniper Ghost games, I don't know if you've ever played any of those, but like Ghost Warrior 2 and 3, and even the newest one, Sniper Ghost Warrior Contracts. They're really, really good, really well done. If you like sniper games, I mean, they're much more stealth focused. Like, you really, play like you're a sniper. You sneak into an area, you wait for a target. You have to view your wind and, make adjustments and all of that. But at the same time, it's not so sim heavy that it's like you have to pull out a notepad and learn calculus and calculate the drop of the bullet and all of that. Like, you have a scope that kind of shows you the wind and all of that. So they're a really good balance between that. The Sniper Elite series, I have always wanted to get into, but I never really liked the World War II setting with those games. So I always tended to prefer the Ghost Warrior games because they were more modern day. Alpha's also saying Factorium. I never have gotten into Factorium.
Me neither, no. But I know that a lot of people are very, very addicted by it.
Yeah. Vermont says she thought she wouldn't like Mass Effect when her brother made her play it. And look at you now. Now she's like one of the biggest Mass Effect fans I know. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of them for all of us, because I feel like most gamers in general, like, a lot of times you just you start out with like a certain genre, and maybe there's even like some casual gamers, that like only play Call of Duty or something like that, but then you introduce them to like XCOM or something completely different. And if they're open-minded, they can really enjoy it. And I think that's a great thing. I love trying to be open-minded as I can and trying out new things.
Yeah, and even something like The Witcher, like initially, like I didn't play the first Witcher initially, and it took me a while. I just couldn't imagine what it was about. It was just another generic RPG. Like, what do I care? But then, like, there are a lot of games like once you give it a try, where it's then very eye-opening, and you're like, oh,
yeah,
this is good. I want more of this.
Yeah, dating visual novels. I never thought that I would enjoy them, but now I just love them. I can't get enough of them.
Day and night, yeah.
No, haven't tried those, but who knows? Maybe I'll get into them. Maybe I'll love them.
I heard what is it? Hatoful Boyfriend is a blast. The pigeon.
I've heard of that one. Yeah,
I heard that it's a lot of fun.
Let's see. Let's do this one from Vermont. What is your worst gaming experience?
Oof. Worst. I mean, it's kind of hard for me because, like, I think the actually worst ones that I stopped playing very quickly.
Yeah.
So it didn't really become like a big experience because I'm not like, I don't like hate watching things or hate playing things just for the sake of it and then ranting about it. So it's kind of tough. I mean, I have for the record have to say the Council. It's an episodic game that came out 2 years
really?
ago. I was really interested in it. Had this cool setting, and then I started the first episode, and I was very underwhelmed. And
that makes me sad because I haven't played it, but I keep wanting to. Like, it keeps piquing my interest.
I know some like it, but that is probably the worst game that I played since I streamed.
I guess we could also kind of modify that question to be like, do you have any gaming regrets? Like, have you bought a game really thinking that you were going to love it, and then it turns out that you hated it? Which it sounds like that's one for you.
Just to finish my mind puke on the Council, then I saw I played through the second episode, and it was so bad that at the end I was just like, I got the season pass. Like, I have all the rest of the episode. I could have easily finished it. I just couldn't anymore. It was so bad. It was ridiculous.
Wow.
But I also know that some people really like it. So I don't know. What do I know?
Alpha says AC Origins. Oh, really? I really liked Origins.
Okay, interesting.
What did you?
Alpha mentioned that the issue that he had was the new RPG elements he didn't like.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was a big departure from Syndicate. Was that the one before? I think that was the one before.
I think so.
Origins. I like Syndicate a lot. I actually really like Syndicate. I think it was a really good game, but I really like the direction that they're taking Assassin's Creed in, and I definitely understand that people aren't, like, some people aren't in love with it, but they're just wrong. So there you go. No, I'm just kidding.
I think in terms of regrets, probably the last two FIFAs that I bought, because like I was a big soccer/football fan, and like I played a lot of FIFA, and it was kind of like a mindless game that I played. But then I also kind of stopped having interest for the sport. So then I just kind of bought the last two ones that I bought. I just bought because I was bored, and those were games that I know, so I just got them, and I kind of regret that because I haven't really played much of them.
Yeah, for me, Watch Dogs 1 was definitely a big disappointment. That was just kind of going back to where Ubisoft lost a lot of trust from a lot of people because of the just straight out terrible way that they showed that game, or the downgrade that happened with that. And even though I fully admit that I don't think it was totally Ubisoft's fault, because they were given specifications for the next gen consoles that that turned out to be way lower than what they actually were. So they were,
Yeah.
creating a game based on the information that they had. But that game just looked nothing like what they shipped. And also just the game in general just was not very good to me. The protagonist was just terribly written. I didn't like him at all. But I don't know. I don't know if if I can really think of too many terrible gaming experiences. I mean, Dark Souls 1, going back to Dark Souls, when I first played it, it was awful. I was trying to play that with a mouse and keyboard, and
I would actually now say Dark Souls 2 for me has become one of my worst gaming experiences, because I actually played through the game, but I hated the last third of the game. And then the more I thought about the game, the more upset I get, in terms of lost opportunities and just a lot of, in my opinion, steps backwards. And it the more I then, because I love Dark Souls 1 so much, and by that time I played through Dark Souls 1 I think at least 2 times, and started a third time, or started multiple ones, and I was super excited to finally get it to play. And I enjoyed the first parts, but the longer it went on, the more I got bothered by some of the, especially enemy placement and level design, which are two of the main points of Dark Souls 1, of the great points of Dark Souls 1. And I just got more and more, because they got worse and worse, and I got so annoyed by it that I just wanted to finish the game to finish it. And since then, it's always, every once in a while, I have the Scholar of the First Sin version, and I never played that version. But every once in a while I think, maybe I should give it a try. And then I remember some of the areas, and I'm like, nah. I don't want to do it again.
I don't like Scholar of the First Sin. I much prefer vanilla Dark Souls 2. Mm-hmm. They, in my opinion, they put just so many more enemies in Scholar of the First Sin, just to make it more difficult. And it doesn't even make...
That's a general issue with Dark Souls 2. I feel there was a lot of, Dark Souls is known to be difficult, so these areas need to be difficult for the sake of difficulty.
But it doesn't even make sense, where they put some of the enemies in Scholar of the First Sin. And I don't know. I mean, I enjoyed playing through it again, but that's just because I love Dark Souls. But I much prefer vanilla Dark Souls 2 over Scholar of the First Sin.
Yeah. I then watched some of Scholar of the First Sin, and the changes that they make, at the very least, don't seem to me that it would make me interested in more. It's some additional content that I haven't played, but I can skip out on that. And the DLCs I never played as well, because I finished the game and then kind of first heard about the DLCs, and they embody everything that I don't like about Dark Souls 2 pretty much.
Oh man, I like the DLCs in 2, but I understand.
Yeah, and I just struggled so much, and it's really a shame, because I love the Soul series so much, but I think I will never play 2 again. And I played through Dark Souls 1 since then again, at least once, if not twice, and twice at least, actually. And I played through Dark Souls 3 multiple times, and I played through Bloodborne multiple times, through Sekiro just once, but it's still fairly new. I'm sure I will get back to that at some point as well. But I don't see myself ever playing Dark Souls 2 again, because that last third just grinded my gears so much.
Yeah. And
I really didn't enjoy it, but at that point I was so deep in that I just wanted to finish it.
Yeah, I mean, even though I enjoy Dark Souls 2, it's very obvious to me that it's a different tone, and just obviously not created by the same, main person. You can just tell there is just something about Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne and Sekiro that Miyazaki just, I don't know, he just has that something that he just puts on those games that is just special. I do think level design is a big part of it. Just really, really brilliant level design in wrapping things around, and so many times in those games I will get past an enemy or get past a boss and be like, where in the world am I? And then it wraps around and you don't even realize that you're like back at the start, and it just
all makes
is
sense, and you're not just in
absolutely.
City.
All right, let's see. Oh, you had another question here. You want to ask that second one?
Yes. So the second one, are there any games that you associate with a particular season? So do you have like a game that you, for some reason or another, associate with winter or summer or spring?
There absolutely are. I feel like when it starts getting cold, I always want to play Skyrim. Like I always want to start a new Skyrim playthrough. I don't know if there's any other games though. I'm sure that there are. I'm trying to think. I feel like for me it's usually winter type. When it gets winter, when it starts getting cold, there's just something about certain games that I want to play, but I don't know if I can really think of any besides Skyrim. Usually it's like big, deep RPGs. I guess just because
inside when everything is cold and dark.
Yeah, it's like, you don't want to go outside. You just want to stay inside and stay warm and get cozy and just get lost in a in-depth RPG. What about you?
I think I have kind of the exact opposite, that I feel like for summer I definitely have more of an urge to play like handheld games, because I think for me it was a lot as a kid. I played a bunch of like with my Game Boy outside. I was just sit in the garden and play with my Game Boy when it was sunny and warm and just hang out. And I think it comes from that like in the summer I kind of get the urge to play Pokemon now, like play more with my Switch and sit on the balcony or something like that, rather than sitting in my room. Which I think, like, I would say, generally speaking, I probably associate Pokemon more with like a spring and fall season for me, because it was always that, oh yeah, I'm sitting outside playing Pokemon, catching Pokemons, and even when I got the 3DS to play Pokemon Sun, that was also during spring, coincidentally. So I got to do that again. And I think that is the one that I associate the most with the season.
Ooh, I got a good one. This is more of a genre, but horror games. Like October comes, I want to play horror games. Yeah, absolutely. Like I typically will try and even set aside like a week or two just to do nothing but just play horror games and just get into a spooky mood. Yeah, I don't know if there's any other ones other than Skyrim and RPGs during the wintertime.
No, I don't think so for me either. It's now that when I look back on certain games, I might associate them more with the season, because it's a time when I streamed them, because it's more prolonged time.
Yeah.
So when I look back at The Witcher 3, it's more of a summer game now for me, because I remember it starting like late spring and then playing it throughout summer. For Arthur, because she didn't have to work during summer.
Right. Holidays, I guess, are kind of a thing too. Like, I don't know, during Christmas time, which I mean, that's more like during, the winter season. I typically don't have a whole lot of work going on then. So I just will, try and take a week or so and just dive deep into a really dark RPG or something like that, Divinity or something. Okay, let's see. Let's do one more. This is from Durbum. Durbum asks opinions on the recent events surrounding The Last of Us 2, where major journalist magazines gave it 10 out of 10. Then the game came out, and suddenly we see average score of 5.5. I'm assuming, Durbum, I'm not sure if you're here, but you're probably talking about like a Metacritic score. This question can also be applied to most games that have been reviewed in recent years, where journalists seem to give quite overhyped ratings to the game, and then public just completely shatters that. I think we could just have like a big discussion about reviews in general. Because I said earlier, I have intentionally stayed away from every single thing that I can with Last of Us 2, so I haven't even looked at any reviews for that. But let's just kind of talk a little bit about reviews in general. So for me personally, reviews are generally not super important to me if it's a game that I know that I want to play. If it's a game that I'm pretty well sure that I'm going to buy, even if I'm not sure it's going to be like a great game, but it looks good and, you know, I've done a little bit of research and it looks like a fun game, then I will generally just pick it up and I just want to make up my own mind. And then I will typically look at reviews and, you know, just kind of get some other opinions of what people think about it. But I usually just like to play the game myself first and then go back and look at reviews. Now, there are a lot of games that, you know, I'm kind of iffy on, especially less known games, maybe smaller games that just aren't getting a lot of coverage. Or maybe it's even like kind of a newish genre or something that I'm not really aware of or not really, you know, like still to this day, JRPGs or like turn-based JRPGs, I have not really played enough of those to really know if I'm going to like Dragon Quest XI, or, you know, something like that, or Ni no Kuni or something like that. So I will sometimes look at reviews for that. When I do look at reviews, I always try to look at multiple sources for reviews. And I have, you know, in general, a few reviewers or just sites that I like to look at because they are generally along the same, they have generally the same taste that I have. I don't think it's a good idea to just blindly look at, oh, GameSpot gave this game a 9 out of 10, must be fantastic. You know, I think it's important to look at who was reviewing that, like what kind of games do they like in the past. And then I also think that it's really important to know, this is why I don't like Metacritic at all. A lot of the review sites, so let me back up. Metacritic has a 100 scale for their reviews. So 0 being the worst, 100 being the best. That would seem to mean to me that a 50 is like an average game. But that's not the case for a lot of review sites. You know,
it's the same with a 10 scale. It's like a 5
right.
doesn't never mean an average. Like we were to that is one of my burning passions that I just hate when it's like, oh, it's like an average game, it's just 8 out of 10. It's like, no, average game, an okay game that doesn't do anything particularly good or bad is a 5, and that is my baseline. And if it's slightly above average, it's 5.5 or 6.
I don't really have a problem with a site like Game Informer. Their scale is, I think a 7 is like an average for them. I mean, that's not how I would do it, but if they specifically state, like if they state on their website what that means, I think that's okay. But the problem is when it goes onto a Metacritic score where a 7 to them is not the same as a 7 from IGN or GameSpot or, you know, all these other reviewers, it just doesn't work to have a conglomeration of these scores. So, and then there's a lot of sites that are getting away from scores, which I think this is probably the best way to do it, is just not really to give a score, but just to give, you know, like general impressions. I think I've said this before, but I think ACG on YouTube does a really good job with this at not really giving a score, but he gives it a buy, rent, or wait for a sale. I think that's a good way to do it. And he also always like justifies if it's a sale, like, you know, he'll say like, this is a buy if you like these kind of games, you know, like obviously if you're reviewing XCOM 2, like I think that's a fantastic game and I would rate that as a buy. Absolutely. But if you don't like turn-based games, then you're not going to like this game. And so you can't give that a buy to somebody. or a 10 out of 10 to somebody that doesn't like turn-based games. So yeah, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that, and I think for me personally, I don't really use or care too much for reviews in general. I'm kind of like the same. I prefer to play through the games myself. It's either a game that I want to play anyway, so why would I look up a review when I want to play it? And then with games that I'm a little bit on the fence about, I don't really look for the scores as much as then I much rather get like opinions from people I kind of know now on Discord or something, where I have a sense of what they like and
Yeah.
they have a sense what I might like, and they can give me then a little bit of a better impression than just reading from Fartface 666 that it's a shit game. So it's really that, and for me it's like, oh, if I'm kind of interested in what like the promo images or like a trailer looks like, then it's like, okay, maybe like either it convinces me to check it out, or I wait until it's on sale. I put it on the wish list and wait until it's on sale, and maybe I pick it up at some point or ask around if someone that I know played it. But I don't go out of my way to look at reviews or anything. If anything, I really just like I like to check out like story reviews about certain games to hear what other people think, and whereas maybe have some aspects that I missed or something like that. But really about like quality reviews, I really avoid, because I feel like it also just leads to pretty senseless discussion about game quality, because like I said, it's very subjective. Like if you're not into turn-based games, then XCOM isn't for you. And even within turn-based, XCOM is very different than, let's say, a Final Fantasy X. Like even there are levels to that and different aspects, and there are obviously some objective qualities and criticisms that you can make about games, but there's also a lot of subjectiveness, and just boiling that down to a 7 out of 10 just is never accurate to anyone. So why even bother?
Yeah. I do think reviews can be helpful if you are looking at some technical points of the games. Like for there's some games that just run terribly, and those need to be called out. And but again, that's like another problem with reviews is like sometimes people don't call out technical issues that they have in a game. Some people rate like technical issues much higher or much lower in the overall score. So it's tough. I mean, if you're really not sure about a game, if you see a game that you think that you might like, but maybe you're playing it on PC and you're not really sure how well it runs, then I think that it's a good idea to look up maybe some reviews. Maybe there's a lot more websites that are doing more like technical analysis of games. Digital Foundry is a really good one that they just primarily look at like how the game runs. And so I think that there's nothing wrong with that, but I also just don't think it's a good idea just to look at one source. Like look at multiple sources, because what one person had as their experience may be completely different as another person with their experiences. So yeah, I think that's a really good and interesting question. I know we're not really answering or talking about the specific question that Durbam asked, but I can't really. I don't really know, because I like I said, I literally have not even looked at a single review.
Yeah, and I think generally speaking, when it comes to if we talk about like the general discrepancies, whether or not it's accurate with Last of Us 2, I don't know myself, but like just generally in gaming, there you where you see like a large discrepancy between like the preview or like pre-sale scores and then the Metacritic scores, or even then the player ratings. I think there are a lot of things that go into that, and it's very individual why it is. Now, it is obviously a truth that the game journalism industry, especially when it comes to reviews and scoring and all of that, that there is heavy connection and interest with large publishers itself, because if they deny you access to games and early access to make your articles, you can't publish articles about them. And there is this high dependency going on, which leads to an understandable level of distrust. But then there's also, then you have these review bombing in recent years for things unrelated to the game itself, and especially whenever you have a female main character, then people go crazy anyway, because apparently that's just not supposed to happen. So it just, and those are all just things that just skew the scores and make it really pointless for me, because I don't know, like if I read an article from IGN about a game, I don't know who the author is. I don't know what he was thinking. Maybe they don't like the game. And we talked about a bunch of games where I also talked about games that I should really like, but I don't. So sometimes it just doesn't click. That could be for the author. Maybe the author got an extra loot box from EA, and that is why it's a 10 out of 10. I don't know that. Maybe the public score on that side is down because it's just some people trolling. I don't know that, and I don't really care if I am interested in the game. I much rather maybe read through a couple of Steam comment reviews to check out if it's like crashing up. Like that is something that I do sometimes with indie games, especially where I'm like, oh, are there any technical issues that I really like? Why is it like a mixed review sign on the side on the Steam page? Is it because it doesn't run well or at all? Okay, that might be something. Or if I'm really interested to check and unsure if I should buy, then a written article about pros and cons about the game gives you a much better impression than just a number or a grade or anything like it.
Yeah, the Steam reviews are all over the place, because I feel like, if one person, I mean, first of all, PC gaming is just a mess when it comes to trying to review and trying to get input from users, because everyone has a different system, and somebody may be using drivers that are 4 years old and hasn't updated their computer in 6 months or something like that, and they say that it crashed on them one time, and then they give the rating a 0 out of 10. So I find that a little frustrating when I'm looking at those types of reviews. Review bombing in general is I don't know, that's just a weird thing to me, and I go back and forth on whether I think it should be allowed or not. I mean, I think Steam has done a little bit better job at kind of, they show like if there's a massive influx of negative or even positive reviews, they even put like a little message down at the bottom. They say like, hey, for whatever reason, this is all of a sudden getting a massive amount of negative reviews. And if you look more into it, it'll be something like, this game was not translated into Chinese text, and so everybody in China is review bombing this game or something like that. It's an interesting subject that I think we summed everything up pretty well, but I think it's an interesting subject for sure.
Yeah. I think you summed up very well, but just like if you're really interested in reviews and they mean something to you, then definitely at least have multiple sources to get them from. Pick out a few known gaming journalists that you kind of feel like, okay, that person generally has a good sense of how they rate games with how I would rate them, to get a good sense for that. I think that is a good way to approach that. But other than that, maybe just don't pay too much attention to those numbers and check them out themselves. Ask a friend, read an article.
Yeah, I am really curious what is going on with Last of Us 2, because again, like I said, I hadn't heard anything about that.
I haven't heard any controversy, so that's all I can say to you. I wouldn't tell you anything otherwise, but I haven't heard any particularly crazy discrepancy between pre-release reviews and now anything. But then again, I don't know, because like don't want to get into that, but obviously there was already a big outcry with Ellie having that love interest in that first trailer that you mentioned, and her being the main character. So all of a sudden, it's obviously the leftist agenda has taken over Naughty Dog.
Well, they must not have
So-
played The Last of Us 1 or the DLC, because it's pretty clear that
but that's it. Like it's the same when the Force Awakens came out, and a black stormtrooper, that is not even possible. It is like how can you do that to us on screen? Having a black character that the cow, no, it's not possible. And like everyone who knows a little bit about Star Wars, that it's not just possible, it's absolutely, and not even the first one. So it's but that's the thing. Like you never know where those reviews then come from, and I could totally see. I mean, that would explain why then some public scoring is way lower. Maybe there is some review bombing going on. I don't know. Maybe it's not as good. I don't know either. But I haven't heard anything too crazy.
I wanted to ask you about this and get your opinion on this. This was something I was going to mention, but I forgot. But I remembered it now. How do you feel about? Final Fantasy VII Remake came out and got fantastic reviews, but almost everyone that reviewed Final Fantasy VII Remake was already a big Final Fantasy fan and were people that had generally like played the original. That kind of annoys me from someone that had not played the original and, had no knowledge. Like I wanted to actually, because I was kind of uncertain on that game. And I did look at some reviews, but almost all the reviews I found were people that had played the original, and of course they're going to love this game, because it's a massive nostalgia burn for them. So I wish that there were more reviews, especially like Pokemon is another good example, like Zelda. I wish that there were more reviewers from people that had never played the series before and, going into it blind and really getting an idea of what they view it as, because I feel like there's a lot of people like myself that are going into these games that have never played Final Fantasy VII before, maybe never played a Zelda game, and I think they would be reviewed very differently if that was the case.
Very true. I think the issue with that is that then you have again the review bombing under the article and be like, what do you know about Pokemon if you never played it before? Like, you can't even tell if that is good Pokemon design. You don't know what Pokemon design is.
Yeah.
And how can you say that Breath of the Wild isn't the greatest game of all times? You haven't played any Zelda game, so you can't even judge that. And I think there's a lot of that. So
I guess, this is probably way too much to ask, but I would really love for like a Game Informer or a GameSpot or IGN or somebody like this to put up two different reviews, and do it from someone that has the nostalgia for Legend of Zelda and that's played all of the Legend of Zelda games, but then also give me a review from somebody that has never played a Legend of Zelda game. I would love to hear what they think. And I think that if you are making this game, like, you should want that as well, because you should want to know what people think that have never played the game before or never played the series before. That's just what I feel.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And Dwala is asking if we write reviews. I usually not, because
never.
like first of all, I have the personally, like, sometimes I kind of feel like I want to, just out of spite. But first of all, for me, it's always like getting into deep detail in a second language. I don't feel too competent to do that. And then also, I'm not an expert on games. I like playing games, and I don't want to pretend that I'm some kind of authority on gaming. So I share my opinions on games, but someone asked me, and I like talking to friends about games.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like if I would personally feel the pressure that if I would sit down and like write like a review, I don't want to just half-ass this and be like, oh, it's a good game. Like, then I want a detailed review. But when I do that, I also kind of feel like who am I to say that?
You almost kind of have to like defend that then,
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. The only thing that I do is like, I have for movies I watch, I use IMDb just for my own sake to rate them. To kind of like, I just like to have my own little database of what movies I watched and how I rated them 5 years ago. But that's
Oh,
just more like a
interesting. Do you know what your highest
project.
rated movie is?
Yes, my highest rated movie. Oh, do I know that? My highest rated movie is probably, yeah, it should be The Big Lebowski. Like I only have like 3 or 4 in the 10 out of 10 category.
Okay.
Because for me, the 10 out of 10 is like as close as perfect as something can be realistically, since nothing is completely perfect. But I actually can look while you.
I'm very much in the same boat. I don't write reviews. I do love to give my impressions on the game, but it's, obviously just much more opinion. Which, I mean, a review is an opinion as well. But yeah, I don't really feel like I am in a place to really give a review. But at the same time, I do love talking about the games, and I think I also generally try to kind of look for the good in games, even if it's not a great game. I try to be as positive as I can about that. And if I feel like if I was reviewing a game, I would not want to do that. I would want to be much more critical, and I don't know if I would like myself for doing that.
I actually have a little more, but not. So my top rated movies are.
All right, here we go. Akko's top rated movies of all time.
The Godfather, okay. Empire Strikes Back.
Godfather 1?
Yes. Then like there are a few TV show episodes that I get a 10. Then I have 2 TV shows that I have at a 10 out of 10. That's BoJack Horseman and IT Crowd. And then I have The Big Lebowski and Fight Club as the other 2 movies.
Fight Club is a great movie.
So that's my list.
Interesting. I think that's going to do it for us today. You got anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you want to bring up?
Anything? Nope.
This was a short podcast today, but
yeah, for our standards.
I know. But no, I think we had a good discussion. And what's coming up for you? More of the same?
Yes, I tried to finish now. Finally, Outer Wilds. If I finish it tomorrow, I do want to get into Mass Effect Andromeda, and then probably Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Things will, like, next week I finally get back to work, so I won't have as much time to play games, but instead actually get some money, which is also nice.
That is nice.
So I think with Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Mass Effect Andromeda, that probably will occupy most of my time then.
Do you know anything about Mass Effect Andromeda?
Yeah, I played like 80% of it.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Yeah, I played a good amount of it too. I think I probably played 50% or so. But you're going to start over? You're going to start anew?
Yeah. It's been when it originally came out, when I last played it, and then just got sidetracked because of some reason. And I really enjoyed it. Don't think it was as good as the original trilogy, but still had a very good time with it. And I'm excited to get back to it, do it, and then actually finish it. Oh yeah, and Trüberburg I'm playing as well.
You're doing that on YouTube, right?
Yes.
Cool. You gonna play as male or female Ryder?
I'm not sure yet. My original one was as female Ryder. So maybe I want to do male Ryder this time, but not sure. I had Femme Shep throughout the original trilogy, so not sure if I want to switch it up because of that, or if I want to continue then Femme Rider. Femme Rid? I don't know.
Vermalt told me something interesting. If you leave the name, the original name, I think is it Sam Ryder? I can't remember what her name is. Ghost Rider. They will actually call you the name in the game.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That is something. That is one of the neat little things that that kind of shocked me in Fallout 4, they have like a certain database of names that when you name your character something, they will actually address you with a first name. So I started my first playthrough with a female character in Fallout 4, and because it's the same voice actor as Jack in Mass Effect, I called her Jack. And I was shocked when all of a sudden Codsworth addresses me as Jack, and I was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, there's a few games that do that. The Codemasters games, the racing games, Grid and Dirt, they do that. They let you pick from like a database of games. It's always cool when they do that.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, Sarah and Scott. That's what you were going to say, Vermalt? Yeah. Well, you told me about it, Vermalt. Let's see. Yeah, I'll be finishing up Last of Us 1 and then starting Last of Us 2. Really excited for that. And I'll be continuing Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask and Nights. Still having a fun time with that. And we will be back here next week, next Friday. And I might check out a bunch of those demos too. Just kind of see how the week goes.
Now that I go back to work, I will have to see. Usually, I don't work on Fridays, but since things are still a little bit weird, we have to keep in touch if something gets in the way.
Yeah, just let me know. I'm pretty flexible with time, so we can adjust the time if we need to, or even the day. But yeah, just let me know.
All right.
All
yeah,
right.
We'll do.
Thank you all for being here. We will see you guys next time. Bye, everyone.